Hey, Cyberspace, Nathan Wallace coming at you from the Empirical Cyberical Engineering offices outside New Orleans, Louisiana. Today is September 28, 2018, and this is the probably about the fifth or sixth video as far as industry news. We like to divide things up into three different categories. We have general, power system, cybersecurity, and conferences. So as far as general, hurricane outlook, Florence, I think pretty much everybody's recovered from that as far as the restoration efforts for the power grid. I think it was like, a little under 2 million, somewhere between 1 and 2 million total restoration. So that's amazing. Definitely, like I said, always kudos to the linemen, that work so hard to get the system back up and running. So as far as the overall outlook, right, there's Kirk, which is in the Gulf. I think it stepped down to a tropical storm. And then we have Rosa, which is actually in the Pacific right now. And it's a Category 4, which, that's pretty scary. But, I think the current projections basically show that it's going to step down to a tropical storm and kind of come up under Los Angeles there. And then, to the States. So, nothing too crazy. But then Kurt, it depends, I guess, once it gets in the Gulf, what's going to happen. It looks like it's dying down. I think over the weekend it's going to, step down to like 35 mile per hour winds, and then, even step down further. But hopefully as it gets in the Gulf, it's not going to, pick back up. As far as the next thing, how will climate change stress the power grid? So this was a study that was recently published. It's shown here on Science Daily. How will climate change stress the power grid? Hint, look at the dew point temperatures. So what was interesting is a new study suggests that the power industry is underestimating how climate change could affect the long-term demand for electricity in the United States. This is interesting, I guess, right? As temperatures rise, there's more storms. There's more extremes, right, as far as this fluctuation in weather, one way or the other, right? It could even be really cold or it could get really, really hot. So what happens is, you're running your AC. You're either running your heater or you're running your cooling to kind of cool things off, and that just increases the demand. So can the power system, can the power grid really support that? That increased demand. Especially, we saw some of the outages here recently as far as, MySo. MySo not having the generation capacity online, and there was actually a couple of outages that, weren't the result of hardware failure. It wasn't the result of a squirrel. It wasn't the result of weather. These were forced outages due to the lack of adequate generation to support the grid. So that's some crazy stuff. Let's see. So keep on cruising. The next thing, some of the utilities that actually helped out with the restoration efforts there in Puerto Rico. It turns out they're getting a bill. Didn't realize this. This is a New York Times article. Utilities helped Puerto Rico fix its power grid. Now they face hefty tax bills. So apparently whenever you do construction in some of these areas, the construction cost, the taxes on those construction costs goes to the local municipality. And the linemen, the utilities all package, pack up and then leave, come back to the their respective companies, and then a couple months, a year later, they're starting to get a bill. If they don't pay it, they start getting these fines, that kind of add up. These numbers are crazy. Florida Power and Light was given 5 days to pay the first $2 million, and 30 days for $333,000 more in taxes, fees, penalties, and interest. This is interesting. This is crazy. I didn't realize that this was even possible, right? But I guess it's the red tape, it's the fine print, and I guess no good deed goes unpunished, right? But hopefully they can get this resolved. I know. I think some of the utilities, they were really doing this on a nonprofit basis, right? The utilities and the contractors, as far as helping neighboring utilities with the restoration. So I'm curious, to see how this comes out. Let's see. The next thing, 20 million, National Science Foundation. 20 million seems quite a bit. Honestly, you can build a whole substation for 20 million. A whole substation, even some connecting lines, right, for 20 million. But this is basically to start a research program, smart grid center, to kind of study the smart grid, talk about the resiliency, even I believe some of the cybersecurity stuff around it. But right, these are computer scientists. These are electrical engineers that are basically looking at what's the physics of the grid, how does it flow, how does it work, doing all these different contingencies. So I would recommend definitely checking this out, and really looking forward to seeing what kind of research comes out of this. There are a lot of other universities that have pretty hefty funding. And it's kind of hit or miss on some of those deliverables and products that come out of that type of research. Let's see, kind of moving on. Advisory committee divided on MySo outage authority. So I think they met here recently. This is an article in the RTO Insider. Let's see. I think they were cracking some jokes there at the beginning. But according to its business practice manual, MySo can only recommend an outage schedule that maintains system security and minimizes adverse impact. So I think basically some of this is saying, what's the kind of authority or jurisdiction that MySo has when it comes to actually saying, in scheduling and planning these types of outages. Let's see. It turns over the keys to the car. Just kind of looking through this. They're cracking more jokes, it looks like. Writing is on the wall. Either we do something or they do something. So it almost seems like some jurisdiction stuff. So obviously a lot of politics and red tape when it comes to some of this stuff. The market even. Legally, what can you do? But yeah, this is getting interesting as far as the outages, planning outages, scheduling outages, and having even enough generation capacity online to support the need for all the utilities that are connected and participating in the market, either buying or even selling. So it affects them as well. Let's see. So we have just announced yesterday, actually, 2 Emerson vulnerabilities. So this is in their device manager. So I have it linked here below to their actual product page. But there's 2 vulnerabilities. One of which actually had a criticality score of 10. So 10's the worst, which basically means it was remotely exploitable, and it allows for remote code execution. So that was just announced. ICS CERT did a advisory yesterday. And then if you also follow Emerson's product CERT, you can see that information there as well. The next item is the draft of NIST 8228. So this is a NIST publication. Let's see if I can pull it up. And it basically looks at IoT, managing considerations for managing Internet of Things, cybersecurity, and privacy risks. So a lot of good people, it looks like, worked on this. This is just the draft, so they probably basically opened it up for comments. You can come back and review it. But the reason I mention this as far as power system cybersecurity is because, we're basically creating a system, and there's pilot projects where the utility can kind of communicate to some of those Internet of Things devices that are behind the meter. And there's actually a group within the IEEE PSCC looking at, these kind of security implications. What are the cybersecurity requirements when the utility wants to connect to some of those IoT type devices? Even, there's some schools of thought, that say, okay, even some of these internet, TCP, IP, Ethernet based devices in the power grid should also be classified as Internet of Things. But I guess that's a debate for a different day. But, this is good stuff, right? Always, the stuff that comes out of NIST, really good. It's just the challenge of whether or not it's being used, whether or not it's actually being used and implemented either in the design, management, or maintenance of these assets. We have to make sure that it's actually being used and that information is being consumed, and implemented. The next thing, and I really like this interview. This is a Bloomberg interview, the ComEd CEO there. And basically, he talks about this two-way grid within the decade. And what's really cool, and like I said, I really like this interview, is the first sentence is pretty much talking about cybersecurity, how they're repelling these cyber attacks, hundreds a year. And then all in the same breath, we have to upgrade the grid. We have to make it smarter, which I absolutely 100% agree. to support this bidirectional flow of power, which is great, as far as his estimation, that we're going to be able to have that within about a decade. So definitely, this is a quick little snippet, so I recommend checking that out as well. As far as conferences, there's still some of the meeting minutes coming in from the IEEE PSCC standards meeting. So this was a couple weeks ago. So as soon as all those minutes get posted, I'll be able to step through and kind of show that. The ICS Village Hack the Capitol was this week. You can actually follow what was coming out of that, on the Twitter thing. But, some comments or observation is, when the industrial control system cybersecurity industry makes statements like, ICS control system devices lack security. They don't have any security. And that's not the case for all industries, and I honestly think we're at a point where we should start looking at individual industries and not just try to place industries under this general industrial control system space. We really need to start looking at things as far as the individual domains or industries or disciplines that these control systems sit in. Because the vendors, there's a lot of cases where the vendors are unique to the particular industry, and this is the case for the power industry. A lot of these vendors are unique only to the power industry, and we can't just make these umbrella statements saying that all industrial control system devices are vulnerable or even lack security. Another conference that was happened this week was the MRO Security Conference. This is the Midwest Reliability Organization. So, one of the key players, they're actually responsible for the reliability of the Midwest there. So they had an event, it's basically a cybersecurity, physical security conference. And, looking through the agenda, almost seemed like it was a lot of incident response type stuff. How do you respond to an event? How do you respond to an incident? And, even as far as broader observation, a lot of these conferences, it seems the focus is on incident response and threat intel. It seems to be, this is just my observation, it doesn't seem to be really focused on, solving some of these engineering challenges. When you talk about bandwidth, when you talk about encryption, when you talk about software-defined radios, when you software-defined networking, actually. And some of these technologies, how do we integrate them? How do we add them? How do we engineer it? How do we document it? That doesn't seem to be the focus for some reason, at some of these conferences. So as far as future, we have the Texas Cyber Summit actually presenting at that one, right, on some solar stuff and battery storage and kind of some of the security implications of DER, distributed energy resources. GridSecCon, that's actually NERC's conference. S4, that's the big one there in Florida every year. Dale Peterson is the host of that conference, or the organizer. So definitely looking forward. Going to be on stage 2. So talking about some engineering approaches to solving these challenges. And then Distributech coming up in February. Definitely looking forward to sharing some stuff with that as far as what we're doing. But then I'm also teaching a class, right, on distribution cybersecurity, 8-hour class, me and a couple other people from different vendors, so Beckwith and then ABB as well. So that's it. Hopefully kind of speed things up a little bit. I want to keep these as short as possible. So today was September 28, 2018. Feel free, if you like these, please subscribe. Always open to feedback, always open to, making these types of talks better. So yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comment below. Thanks for watching.